Audrey Sinclair, 29, never thought her life would spiral into a social media nightmare. She believed relationships were about trust, mutual respect, and honest communication. But one Thursday afternoon, as sunlight filtered through her apartment blinds, she discovered a side of her boyfriend, Ethan, she never expected. Audrey had been dating Ethan for 8 months. To the world, he seemed perfect, thoughtful, attentive, and supportive. But then came the TikTok videos, her boyfriend secretly posting a series called Dating Up, How I'm Training My Woman, showing her as some manipulative trainer, molding him into the ideal partner. She found out purely by accident. Her coworker, Diego, had been scrolling through TikTok during lunch. "Isn't this your boyfriend?" he asked, pointing at a video of Ethan, laughing and following instructions Audrey had given months ago, now framed as a lesson. The caption read, "Day 43, how I got him to stop wearing those hideous gaming hoodies." Audrey froze, her sandwich halfway to her mouth. There were dozens of videos, highlighting every tiny adjustment he'd made, switching restaurants, throwing out old protein shakers, buying flowers weekly, even practicing skincare routines, all framed as if she had trained him. Ethan's public commentary turned her life into content for 52,000 followers. The first wave of shock quickly turned into betrayal. Each video depicted Audrey as a manipulator, a project manager of a man's behavior. There were snippets showing her encouragements, her advice, mundane, loving, everyday gestures, now twisted as strategies in some social media game. Audrey could feel her stomach knotting with disbelief and anger. That evening, she confronted him. Ethan, pale and stumbling over his words, tried to laugh it off. "It's just content. It's satire, you know. People expect... It's not real." Audrey's voice shook. "Not real? I didn't sign up to be a character in your viral series. Every word, every gesture, it's mine, not a joke for your followers." Ethan stammered, trying to explain. I thought it was funny. Everyone else thinks it's funny. Brianna, my friend, she's been doing the same thing with her boyfriend. I didn't mean to hurt you." Audrey's mind raced. There was more. She found Ethan's private TikTok account, even worse than the public one, where he and Brianna openly compared strategies and points, rating their partners on obedience and trainability. There were spreadsheets, voice notes, and screenshots that chronicled everything she had ever done for him, now cataloged as achievements in some bizarre social experiment. Feeling both devastated and enraged, Audrey decided to take control. She recorded her first response video from the passenger seat of her car. "Oh, so my boyfriend has been training me for months. Let's talk about the red flags I missed." It was simple, honest, and raw. She shared the reality behind the videos, her side of their relationship, the emotional labor she had invested, and the manipulation she had endured. The video went viral within hours. Views skyrocketed to 100,000 in 4 hours. People began to see Ethan's actions for what they were: manipulative, deceitful, and toxic. Comments poured in, supporting Audrey, exposing Ethan's behavior, and dissecting the spreadsheets and lessons he'd been keeping. The tension escalated rapidly. Ethan tried to negotiate, claiming it was all for engagement and that the content wasn't meant to hurt her. But Audrey had gone too far down the rabbit hole to accept excuses. She had receipts, screenshots, and messages. She was no longer a passive participant. She was documenting her side, controlling the narrative, and exposing the truth to the world. By the end of the night, Audrey knew this was more than a TikTok feud. This was about her identity, her autonomy, and reclaiming control over her life. She realized that the person she thought she knew, Ethan, was capable of using her love and trust as fodder for content, and she wasn't about to stay silent. The first wave of viral response had begun, setting the stage for a social media storm and personal reckoning. Audrey Sinclair was done being someone else's project. The morning after Audrey's first viral response, the consequences hit like a tidal wave. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications, DMs, comments, news alerts. Everyone was talking about Ethan's training series, and the narrative had shifted. People were outraged on her behalf, dissecting every spreadsheet, every lesson, every manipulation tactic he had shared. Audrey spent the early hours scrolling through Brianna's posts. Brianna, who had been helping Ethan track every little achievement Audrey had made in their relationship, had kept an entire private feed of her and Ethan's discussions. There were screenshots of messages where Ethan asked Brianna for tips on how to make Audrey buy flowers, encourage him to clean, or act impressed with his small gestures. There were points tallied, reward systems, and checklists. Audrey's blood ran cold. She realized just how calculated this had been. Every time she thought she was expressing love, supporting Ethan, or giving advice, it had been logged as progress toward his social media persona. Everything Audrey had done was now evidence of her trainability, according to Ethan's warped system. By noon, Audrey decided to respond strategically. She began documenting her own story, every detail of her experience, every attempt to help Ethan grow, every manipulative tactic he had employed. But this time, she framed it as truth, raw and cinematic. No editing, no clever hashtags, no game. Just Audrey. Meanwhile, Ethan was panicking. His followers were dropping rapidly as public opinion turned against him. Comments called him toxic, manipulative, and deceitful. Even Brianna started distancing herself, realizing the blowback could affect her reputation. Audrey wasn't done. She dug deeper, finding the videos Ethan had made where he compared her to his previous partners. These clips showed that Audrey was not the first woman he had cataloged and rated for social media content. The comparison was ruthless. Every ex had been assigned points, rewards, or penalties based on their behavior. Her stomach churned as she realized the pattern. This wasn't harmless content. This was a meticulous, ongoing practice of emotional manipulation. By evening, Audrey uploaded another video. This one was cinematic, intense, and emotionally charged. She narrated how she felt discovering that her love had been turned into a spectacle, exposing the intricate web Ethan had woven. She included the evidence Brianna had accidentally leaked: screenshots, voice notes, and even the spreadsheets. The impact was immediate. Views exploded, and people shared the content widely. Social media users began calling out Ethan for emotional abuse and manipulation. Ethan tried to salvage his image, posting a video claiming it was all satire, a harmless joke, and that Audrey was overreacting. But Audrey had anticipated this. She responded with a side-by-side analysis, his videos versus her real-life actions. The contrast was stark. Where Ethan portrayed her as controlling or manipulative, the truth was loving, patient, and reasonable. The public saw through the smokescreen. Then came the most shocking revelation. Audrey discovered that Ethan had been texting his ex-girlfriend, Marissa, during their relationship, asking for advice on how to manipulate her, how to frame situations for TikTok content, and how to train her responses. Marissa's input had guided some of the most intimate manipulations Audrey had experienced, turning her life into an orchestrated performance. This revelation pushed Audrey over the edge. She posted a third video. The person I loved turned my life into content. And it wasn't just him, his ex-girlfriend was helping him. The video went viral within hours, 2.3 million views. Fans, viewers, and social media influencers shared it widely. Commentary poured in, calling the situation a masterclass in gaslighting and manipulation. Ethan's panic escalated. He tried to engage in damage control, hiring a consultant named Harmony, who promised to negotiate a brand-safe resolution. Harmony proposed that Audrey delete her content, co-create videos, and pretend to reconcile for engagement and brand purposes. But Audrey refused. She wasn't interested in compromise. This wasn't a negotiation. This was exposure and reclaiming her autonomy. Audrey had fully reclaimed her narrative. The tables had turned. She was no longer a subject of manipulation. She was a storyteller, a crusader exposing deceit. Ethan was cornered, his followers dwindling, his credibility collapsing. Audrey realized the journey ahead would be brutal, but she was determined to see it through. No matter how many videos, spreadsheets, or manipulative tactics Ethan and Brianna threw at her, the storm had just begun. Audrey woke up to a barrage of notifications, tweets, DMs, and news alerts about her viral videos. The public was fully invested now. Ethan's followers had halved, and the commentary was relentless. Emotional abuse disguised as content. Toxic manipulation exposed. She's brave for showing the truth. Audrey felt a mix of vindication and exhaustion. The emotional toll was immense, but the fight for her story's integrity was worth it. By mid-morning, she received an unexpected message from Marissa, Ethan's ex. The tone was hesitant, almost apologetic. Marissa admitted that she had unknowingly facilitated Ethan's manipulation, providing guidance on content, points, and strategies to train Audrey. She confessed that she had thought it was harmless fun, never realizing how deeply manipulative Ethan's system had become. Audrey read the messages silently, tension rising in her chest. This wasn't just betrayal by a partner. It was a conspiracy that had involved multiple people close to him. The next escalation came from Ethan's mother, a woman named Dolores. She called Audrey repeatedly, leaving voicemail after voicemail, demanding that Audrey return the emotional investment and delete her content. Dolores framed Ethan as a victim, a naive young man who had only wanted to share a fun project online. Audrey ignored the calls, focusing instead on her next move, gathering hard evidence. She downloaded every screenshot, voice note, and video clip, ensuring that her exposure of Ethan's manipulation would be airtight. Audrey also reached out to Brianna. She proposed a direct conversation, face-to-face. They met in a quiet cafe, tension palpable in the air. Brianna looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with a coffee cup. Audrey didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You helped him manipulate me," she said, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "Do you realize that?" Brianna stammered, admitting that she had followed instructions without questioning them, but she hadn't realized the full extent of the harm. Audrey listened, but made it clear. Intentions didn't erase consequences. Brianna promised to cease sharing any content and publicly clarify her role, a small but significant victory. Meanwhile, social media reached a fever pitch. Journalists began covering the story. TikTok manipulation scandal, woman exposes partner's emotional exploitation, and the spreadsheet affair. Clips from Audrey's videos were shared widely, dissected, and analyzed. Experts weighed in on emotional abuse, manipulation tactics, and the role of social media in perpetuating toxic behavior. Audrey felt the weight of being the center of a digital storm, but she also felt empowered. She was controlling her narrative, and for the first time since discovering Ethan's schemes, she felt a sense of clarity. Ethan attempted to strike back. He posted a series of videos claiming satire, insisting that Audrey was overreacting and exaggerating for views, but the public was not buying it. Audrey countered by releasing side-by-side comparisons, his videos versus the reality of their interactions. The contrast was damning. Every attempt at humor or satire fell flat against the undeniable evidence of manipulation. Ethan's credibility crumbled. Then came the family confrontation. Audrey's parents, both protective and fiercely supportive, reached out to Ethan's mother. They wanted to settle matters civilly, but also make it clear that Audrey would not be silenced or intimidated. The conversation was heated, accusations flew, cultural misunderstandings clashed, and old grievances surfaced. But Audrey's parents stood firm, asserting that their daughter had every right to expose the truth. They demanded an end to harassment and insisted that Ethan take responsibility for his actions. In the midst of this chaos, Audrey's final blow was strategic. She compiled a comprehensive, evidence-based video documenting everything. Ethan's training series, the spreadsheets, Brianna's involvement, and Marissa's messages. She narrated it with clarity and emotional depth, giving context to every clip. The video went live and immediately exploded. Millions of views, shares, and comments poured in. Public sentiment overwhelmingly supported Audrey, celebrating her bravery and condemning Ethan's manipulative tactics. Audrey had transformed from a victim to a public advocate. She had exposed manipulation, confronted the co-conspirators, and reclaimed her narrative. Ethan was left isolated, his followers dwindling, his credibility in ruins. Audrey, though emotionally drained, felt a sense of liberation. She had faced the storm and survived. The battle was far from over, but Audrey had clearly shifted the balance of power. The morning after Audrey's comprehensive video went viral, her life changed overnight. Notifications poured in relentlessly. Emails, social media alerts, and news outlets reaching out for interviews. Audrey barely had time to process it all, but there was a strange sense of satisfaction in knowing the truth was finally visible to everyone. Ethan, on the other hand, had gone silent. No posts, no explanations, just the creeping panic of public scrutiny. Audrey received messages from strangers sharing their own experiences with manipulative partners. Women and men alike thanked her for shining a light on tactics they had silently endured. It was overwhelming, emotional, and validating all at once. She realized that this wasn't just about her story anymore. It was bigger. It had become a cautionary tale, a mirror for anyone who had ever been manipulated under the guise of love or humor. Ethan's next move was desperation. He hired a crisis management consultant, a woman named Harmony, known for handling viral scandals and repairing public reputations. Harmony proposed a plan: delete all content, create joint content portraying reconciliation, and spin this as a relationship growth journey. Audrey considered the offer, but her gut told her no. This wasn't reconciliation. This was an attempt to gaslight her publicly, to make her complicity seem mutual. She refused. Harmony left, but not before warning Audrey that Ethan's legal team might escalate to civil action. That evening, Brianna reached out again, this time more earnestly. She wanted to post her own apology, clarifying her part in Ethan's manipulative tactics. Audrey agreed, but only if the apology was honest, unfiltered, and publicly visible. Brianna hesitated, but eventually complied, sharing screenshots of past conversations and admitting her role in Ethan's schemes. The public reacted positively, appreciating the transparency and accountability. Audrey felt a flicker of relief. It wasn't perfect, but it was justice in a small form. Ethan's mother, Dolores, escalated. She attempted to file a formal complaint demanding that Audrey return gifts, delete her content, and issue a public apology. Audrey's parents intervened immediately, defending her rights. They reminded Dolores that everything Audrey shared was truthfully documented, and that attempting to intimidate or silence her would only worsen the legal and public consequences for their family. Dolores finally went silent, though Audrey knew she would continue to lurk online, seething. As the public frenzy calmed slightly, Audrey turned her attention inward. She reflected on what she had learned about trust, boundaries, and her own resilience. She realized how deeply manipulative Ethan's actions had been, and how easily subtle tactics could erode self-confidence. Through therapy and self-reflection, she rebuilt her sense of agency, understanding that the manipulation wasn't her fault and that her story could help others recognize red flags in their own lives. Ethan attempted one final public statement, claiming satire and misinterpretation, but the backlash was immediate. The contrast between his words and Audrey's documented evidence was stark. Public sentiment overwhelmingly sided with Audrey. His follower count plummeted, and brands that had considered collaborations with him withdrew their interest. Every attempt to repair his reputation failed. Audrey's life slowly returned to a new normal. She started creating content on her own terms, videos about personal growth, emotional intelligence, and navigating complex relationships. Her following grew steadily, not because of scandal, but because of authenticity. She also rekindled a sense of personal joy, spending time with friends, family, and finally, someone new who respected her autonomy. In a final twist, Audrey discovered that Marissa, Ethan's ex, had quietly left social media entirely after witnessing the fallout. She sent Audrey a private message. "Thank you for exposing the truth. I will never be complicit again." Audrey read it silently, a mixture of vindication and empathy filling her chest. She realized the impact of her actions reached far beyond herself. Weeks later, Audrey Sinclair felt a rare sense of calm. The initial storm had passed, leaving her with the quiet satisfaction of having taken control of her story. Ethan, once a central figure in her life, had faded into irrelevance, his social media accounts deactivated, and attempts at damage control abandoned. His manipulative tactics had backfired spectacularly, leaving him isolated while Audrey's reputation had strengthened, not through scandal, but through authenticity and courage. Audrey received one last legal notice. Ethan's team had attempted a civil suit demanding compensation for alleged emotional damages. Her lawyer, a trusted friend who had guided her throughout the ordeal, laughed. "Audrey, they don't stand a chance. Everything is documented. Emails, messages, videos. He dug his own grave." The court swiftly dismissed the case, officially recognizing the documented evidence of Ethan's manipulative behavior and his ex-girlfriend's complicity. Audrey's sense of justice was complete, though she reminded herself that true closure was internal, not legal. The personal aftermath brought unexpected healing. Audrey began spending more time with her family, especially her younger sister, who had always admired her strength but had never seen her tested like this. They shared late-night talks, laughter, and tears, forging a bond deeper than either had anticipated. Audrey also began mentoring friends and strangers alike, sharing lessons learned about manipulation, boundaries, and self-respect. She realized the most powerful legacy of her experience was not revenge or exposure. It was education and empowerment. Romance re-entered her life cautiously. A new relationship began with someone genuinely interested in her well-being rather than control or social media content. His name was Lucas, a patient and empathetic graphic designer. Unlike Ethan, Lucas never sought to influence Audrey's choices for his gain. He valued honesty, communication, and mutual respect. Together, they discovered that intimacy could exist without manipulation, a revelation Audrey cherished deeply. The contrast to her previous relationship was stark, reinforcing the importance of recognizing emotional red flags before trust was fully given. Meanwhile, the fallout for Ethan and Brianna played out publicly. Brianna attempted minor damage control but faced criticism for her prior complicity. She remained largely offline, the weight of public scrutiny forcing reflection. Ethan, humiliated and isolated, faded from social attention entirely. Any attempts to reconcile with his previous victims were ignored, as they had learned the hard way about the dangers of manipulation. His downfall was both inevitable and just, a stark reminder of the consequences of deceit. Audrey's professional life blossomed as well. She leveraged her newfound platform to create content focused on emotional intelligence, relationship dynamics, and self-empowerment. Brands approached her not because of controversy, but because of authenticity. Her message resonated. Emotional resilience and personal boundaries were invaluable skills, and her story served as a blueprint for navigating toxic relationships. Fans from around the world shared personal stories, creating a supportive community that extended far beyond social media metrics. The story reached a poetic full circle when Audrey received a message from Marissa, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, who had quietly vanished from social media during the scandal. Marissa expressed gratitude for exposing the truth and breaking the cycle of manipulation. Audrey felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her courage had ripple effects, impacting more lives than she had initially imagined. Audrey Sinclair smiles, finally free, with her life fully her own. The manipulative forces of the past are gone, replaced by authenticity, love, and self-respect. For the first time in months, she feels unshakable, ready to embrace the future with clarity, wisdom, and hope.